the other massive stories today, the massive stories that I think has caught a lot of Arsenal fans off guard, is that Partey might be leaving. And it's concrete that he could be on his way out the door when it was only up until that 4-game collapse. This guy was being discussed by everybody involved with Arsenal as maybe the best DM in the league, better than Rodri, better than Casemiro, one of the best midfielders in the world. To 2 months later, the club's looking to rebuild its midfield, and it's going to be around the likes of Odegaard and Rice, and both Xhaka and Partey could be gone. Is this caught you off guard? Did you expect to see him potentially on his way out?
Look, first of all, the whole Partey compared to Rodri and Casemiro, come on, man. This is like, I felt like I was like reliving Liverpool's last few glory years, where every single player they have is now all of a sudden the best player in the world and one of the best players in their position of all time. Like, Partey is a good player. He's a very good DM, and he was huge to what Arsenal were doing last year. But it's not a coincidence the last 2 seasons, when Arsenal have collapsed at the tail end of the season, Partey has either been unavailable through injury or his form has completely dropped off a cliff. So in that sense, it's not a surprise to me that Arteta views Partey as someone who he can't rely on. Let's just talk about the footballing side of things. I think that's really the big side from the footballing aspect, that he's just not a reliable enough player. And I think he's 29, turning 30 soon. He's not getting any younger. He's not going to be getting any better. And when you see guys like Lavia, Declan Rice, Moses Caicedo on the market, really a really good amount of top young defensive midfielders, I think this is the perfect time for Arsenal to strike and sign one of them. Xhaka is another one, right? He was playing more advanced this season, but again, if he wants to leave, there's not really much you can do for that.
Yeah, I looked at it this way. Yeah. Now, look, I'll say it because we're on the Straight Fact show. There could be a non-footballing reason as to why Arsenal are looking to push him out. And we all know what that is about, but we'll put that aside. I want to say this in the right way. Partey's really good, but when it came to that business end of the season, he's maybe your most experienced outfield player, along with Gabriel Jesus and Xhaka. And he let you down. He dropped the ball. He went completely and utterly missing in one of the most important roles on the football pitch. You saw, for instance, Rodri. The man literally won the Champions League for his team, stepped up when needed. Casemiro, right towards the end of the season, we had a bit of sketchy form. He came back into it, scored that brilliant opening goal against Bournemouth as an example. He came in and he galvanized our team, and he led us right to the end for a big season for us. Where Partey, when the push comes to shove, he always misses some of the biggest. He seems to always miss the biggest games of the season. Now, it might just be bad luck, but when it keeps happening over and over again, suddenly you start to think, come on, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Mm-hmm. Equally, what is he going to be? By the end of his contract, he's going to be 31. That means you extend his deal now by what, 3 years, which means you got a 5-year deal.
It's not
one of the highest paid players at the club. When the right development into a Caicedo or into a Lavia could see them at Partey's level inside the next 2 years, you get a longer period of time on less money. You could bring money in for him now to reinvest. I don't think it's the worst decision in the world from Arsenal. And there's clearly something. And now this is where I think this is what I always like, right? I get Lee Gunner if he's angry, because I bet Lee's angry about it. Because he doesn't like Arteta. He'll attack him over it, right? Yeah. But all the Gooners who all year have told us, back the process, back the manager, Arteta's this, Arteta's that. They're so angry with all of Arteta's decisions in the transfer market. And it makes me wonder, do you really trust your manager? Do you really believe he's as good as you said he is? And these are the same fans, by the way, that were fuming that wanted Richarlison over Jesus. The same fans who said, how dare we sign Ben White? What the hell is a Gabriel when he came in? Why were you spending money on Odegaard? And look how they've all delivered and done for him. Tomiyasu, who's he? No one even knows what position he plays. I think he's been phenomenal for 8 million quid for Arsenal. They had a season that nobody expected. But the level of outrage I see about the decisions the same man's making, it's not computing for me. Maybe I'm not a Gooner and I don't get it, but I don't know about you, Liez. It's weird seeing outrage. Like, as I said, I don't really want Mount, but I'm trusting my manager to not get irate about it. Does that make sense? But with some Gooners, they're fuming. They're fuming.
I'll be real, to be honest with you. for me, the majority of Arsenal fans I've seen on Twitter, maybe it's just the people I follow, are actually, in my opinion, like obnoxiously positive. Like a lot of the Arsenal fans that I follow, it's like everything Arteta does, like there's like a
You need
message
to send
sent
me that
from
action,
God.
bruv. I need more of that. My timeline is so toxic. I've got
Yeah,
to
we
start
can switch
following
if you
people.
we can switch if you
Please,
want, bro. You can
please,
have them all.
please, please.
I'm seeing a lot of Arsenal fans. It's almost like, yo, Arteta, he's seeing through the same eyes like as God, and like everything that he does is the correct decision. And I'm seeing a lot of like, oh, Havertz, we're signing him clearly to play in this left side. That's just my view, but this is the way I viewed Arsenal all season, right? I was very impressed with Arsenal season, obviously, and the reason I actually had Mikel Arteta probably until the last few weeks where his team fell off as the manager of the season is because I looked at this team and I looked at a lot of these players and I thought, is this team really like as good as we think they are, or are they massively overperforming their average level? In my opinion, it was the second. I credited Arteta massively because I think his coaching was really increasing the ceiling of players that just shouldn't have been hitting a 90 or trajectory 90-point tally at the end of the season. But that's kind of why I like these moves, because I think if Arsenal were to go in with most if not all of the same group in one or two additions, I don't know if Arsenal would have just automatically hit 90 plus points. I say again, they didn't even hit 90 plus points last year. I don't know if that would have just happened. So I'm a firm believer, Terry. I look at City's greatest teams. I look at United's old greatest teams, Liverpool's old greatest teams. What, we got some transfer news?
Finish what you're saying, though. Sorry.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, so you'll have to fill me in on that. But I think of United's greatest teams ever. I look at City under Pep, and I look at what Liverpool failed to do. For top teams to stay at the top and sustain challenges, which I always say sustaining is always harder than mounting the initial challenge. You have to be ruthless. You have to continue adding quality on top of quality already. And you're going to see players that you kind of saw come up through this process, through this rebuild that you had. They're going to be dashed out the back door, and it's going to hurt you because you grew attached to these players. But to continue being successful and sustain success, you have to be ruthless. And for me, it's the biggest reason why Liverpool under Klopp have had two fall-off seasons. It's because the board and Klopp have not been ruthless enough the way Fergie was and the way Pep is now. So I do respect what Arteta is doing.
100%. And a great example, and I always go back to my club because I remember it more vividly. It's only really been the last 6 or 7 years since I've been running the Terrace that I've watched every other club. I haven't missed. I actually only realized it for the last 5 seasons. I haven't missed a single game of any member of the traditional top 6. I've watched every match they've played in every competition, which is ridiculous when you actually deep that, right? But years back, I didn't do that. But when Fergie was at his pomp, when he sold Ruud van Nistelrooy, there was outrage. I was living in Manchester at the time, and there was why he's one of the best strikers in the world, because the manager saw what was coming from Ronaldo and Rooney as an example, had eyes on already on. He had obviously Louis Saha and Alan Smith. Alan Smith at the front, but he was eyeing up Tevez and a few others. But his view was, I've got to move this number 9 out because we're going to kind of change football a little bit. And Man United did at that point in the Premier League with the kind of inverted forwards and the fluid front three where there wasn't an out-and-out number 9. But he knew he had to be ruthless and sacrifice somebody to move them on. As you say, Pep is one of the best at doing that. You look at the players that might be leaving this year. The Mahrezes and the Kyle Walkers, I still think are at the peak of their powers. But what he doesn't want to let happen at Man City is for them to become lesser versions of themselves and move on. And I think Arteta, as I say, I haven't seen that many positive gooners talk about this online. But having said that, it's Father's Day, and I've barely been on Twitter today. So maybe just some people I follow, it's come up on my timeline and I'm misreading it, and I apologize if I have. But you're right, he does need to be ruthless. He does need to be, this guy's really good, but I think we can get better. And I said this to gooners, and go back to what I said back in February when you were first heavily linked to Rice. I said Rice will replace and be better at your club than Thomas Partey.
Easily.
And I meant bench him. He's going to get sold for him because Declan Rice has and always will be better than Thomas Partey. Now, I know you love him, but Man United fans and Arsenal fans have done this alike because our teams have been in the mud for a decade plus. If we were too attached to players and we care more about the players and the hype we give them online than we do the football club. At the end of someone said to me the other day, I bet you wouldn't swap Rashford for Mbappe if there was an opportunity to. So I love Rashford. Of course I would, though. I would put Rashford in the boot of my M4 and drive as fast as I could to Paris and drop him off and say, "Cheers, bruv." I would. I love Rashford.
Wait,
But
are you sure though Terry and Mbappe could do it in the Prem? Are you
yes,
sure? Rashford is
110.
Prem proven, bro. Mbappe.
Yeah, I know. I would do it. Like I would have no qualms. I'd have no qualm in the world with doing it. If you can give me a better player, it shouldn't even be like the worst thing I ever hear. And I did see it a lot from Gooners this season, but I've seen it from many other fan bases. The whole, oh, we can't sign Mbappe because it'll get in the way of the development of Garnacho. What? Like people say stuff like that. I've seen Arsenal fans in the past turn down like opinion wise go, no, we shouldn't sign this brilliant attacker because we've got to develop Smith Rowe. No, if Smith Rowe's good enough, it'll be good enough. If he isn't, he isn't. Like you've got to get this bullshit out of your heads
That's
and
another thing too,
be
right?
ruthless.
Competition breeds success. Competition breeds success, and it breeds improvement from individual players.
It absolutely, oh mate, it absolutely does. So I look at this and think to myself, this right? You've got the Kai Havertz news where he's coming in, and Arsenal fans like, oh, I don't know if that's the right deal. Partey leaving. Some are saying, I don't know if that's the right deal. You know what you said about Bruno? You did a 180 on him this year. Over the course of last summer, I changed my mind about Mikel Arteta. And it had nothing to do with watching All or Nothing because that stuff is edited.
Yeah. It's propaganda.
It is. And I watched the City one and loved it. And I stopped watching those shows when they didn't show any of the Poch sacking. I'm like, hang on, how can you do Tottenham and not show what happened? That means they're not showing. You can't have the full story because they literally.
That means Spurs are in control of what gets put out.
Yeah, exactly. So if they're controlling it, you're not seeing what's really going on. So for me, I've switched off from watching it. But I watched over the summer with the players he bought, the way he was talking, the way they performed in preseason, how they started the season. I'm like, this guy's actually there's a legit coach in there. And there was a comment that came through earlier that said Arsenal's season is a flash in the pan, no different to Leicester winning the league. Next year they won't finish top 4, and Rice is a clown for not seeing that. For me, listen, you could guess that right, and they don't make top 4. If they don't make the top 4, it's not going to be through a lack of them not being a brilliant team still. It might just mean that 4 other teams are better than them, but I just don't see Arsenal slipping back into mediocrity again. I just don't see it, Liez. I think they've moved on so far from there. Their young players, Saliba, Saka, Martin, they're all going to be a year older, a year more experience. Bet the manager's going to have learned from last year. If these signings work again 3 summers running,
their trajectory is undoubtedly increasing high. Like if you really believe that Arsenal are going to take a massive step and potentially even fall to the top 4, I don't know what you've been watching the last 12 months, bro.
Yeah, I don't either.